And as Scott points out in his prayer journal, some of these excuses are at least a little bit suspect. I mean, the guy says, I just purchased some land, and so now I got to go check it out. Well, don't you usually check out land before you buy it? And the other guy says, I got to go check out my ox, that I just bought. Well, don't you usually check out the ox before you buy them? There's something suspect about all of these excuses. What they all have in common, however, is that the people are saying, look, I'm too busy doing my own thing to get on board with your party. And they're really dissing the host. It's really an insult to the host. So the host gets angry and he says, okay, tell you what, you go out, first of all, into the inner city. You go into to the towns and the alleys where the poor people live, where the beggars live, where the lowlifes, quote unquote, of the first century live. And I want you to invite all these folks who normally would never get invited to my party. I want you to go to the poor and to the disabled, the lame and the blind, and invite them. The guy says, okay, we've already done that. And there's still room. And so now the guy says, okay, then go out and invite everybody. Go out on the hillside. Invite those peasant farmers that are really working as slaves to the Roman government. And invite them. Compel them to come in. Compel them to come in. And what's radical about this is not just that he's inviting these folks, but remember, in the first century, he's now saying, I'm going to identify with these folks. This is going to be my new tribe. These outcasts, these misfits, these lowlifes are now going to be my new group. The judged, the oppressed, they're going to be my new group. This invitation is not based on anything found in the recipients. It's not based on social standing. It's not based on sameness, on the equality of the host and the recipients. This invitation is based on one thing only, and that is the graciousness of the host. And the abundance of his resources. And the fact that he wants his house full. He doesn't care any longer what your social standing is, what your ability level is, what your income is, what your religiosity is or isn't. This is a free-for-all, ollie in free. Whoever wants some food, come here, because I want my house full, and I've got the ability to feed everybody. It's based on the graciousness of the host and on nothing else. It says that he tells his servant to go out and compel them to come in. Compel them. Now, you may not have known it, but this one verse here in Luke has been the most tragically interpreted and most grotesquely abused verse in the Bible, in my opinion. It started with St. Augustine in the 5th century. And St. Augustine had some wonderful theology, and I'm sure was a wonderful person, and said some wonderful things. But he also screwed up the church in the most magnificent way imaginable, for centuries, and was still under some of his screwed upness. He took this verse to justify, compelled them to come in. He took it and used it to justify torturing people to get into the faith. Hey, it says compel them, doesn't say how to compel them. So perhaps a little pain would help persuade them to give up their heresies or being infidels and to come into the church. He was the first one to do that, and once he did it, well, the whole history of the Middle Ages was about burning witches and Jews and Muslims and heretics at the stake, or inflicting other kinds of torture on them, trying to elicit a confession of faith from them. Which, when you think about it, is pretty stupid, because even if you get a confession of faith, I mean, honestly, a guy's burning at the stake, he goes, okay, I guess I do believe in Jesus. Yeah, right. It just, I think, goes to show how stupid religion is, how demonic religion can be, how you can take something that is in its original context perfectly beautiful and turn it into something that justifies complete demonic ugliness. Because in the original verse, this is a beautiful passage. Here is this host, he's wealthy, he's got a mansion, he's got all this food, and he says, compel the beggars, compel the farmers, compel the disabled to come and eat at my feast. And the word compel there does not mean coerce. No, it means to implore, to beg. Beg them. I want them in my house so badly. I want my house to be full. It's a statement of humility. I'm compelling you to come to my party. And with Augustine, it got totally screwed up. Get a picture of what this would look like. Well, you get a mansion, and there's opulence, and there's this great feast, and there's a great ballroom. It's huge. And now you have it filled. You got the nicely dressed host, and everything's nice and clean and tidy, and all this food and all this opulence, but it's filled with people who are off the streets, people who come with their rags, who come with their issues, with their disabilities, You've got the poor there, the beggars, the lame, the blind, the disabled. You've got the peasant farmers there. You're going to have all, he says, just go out and invite everybody. You're going to have the tax collectors who rip off people. You're going to have the prostitutes there. You have a ballroom full of what would have been dirty, smelly misfits in this opulent house. Folks, that is a vision of the kingdom. That is a vision of the kingdom. These folks all together having a feast like they've never had before. The reason the host would have to compel them to come is because the people themselves probably would have trouble believing this. Like, what is this? Some kind of joke? You're going to make fun of me? Is this some kind of a trick? Why would I ever be invited to that person's party? And the host is saying, beg them, compel them, persuade them that, in fact, I mean it. I really want them. They are my new group. They are my new tribe. And in telling this story, Jesus is turning the table on the Pharisees. Now, to understand that, we got to know a little bit of background here, okay? Biblical background to this parable. If you go back to the beginning, the only thing God ever wanted, the reason he created the world, the reason he created humanity, was to invite us in at a banquet, a supper. He is a God of infinite resources. He's the epitome of, he is the definition of love and goodness and joy and peace himself. And he wants to share himself with us. He created us to receive his love, to reflect his love, and to spend eternity feasting on his love, dancing with his love, celebrating his love. That's the creational goal from the start. That's all he ever wanted. An invitation that would be based not on our merits, but simply on his goodness and on his grace and the infinite opulence of his resources. The fall, the rebellion, spoken about in Genesis 3, complicated matters significantly. And now God was going to have to go through a long process of getting us back to the place where we'd really trust him and see that he means this invitation and engage us in accepting that invitation. And so one of the strategies God hit on, it's the main strategy spoken of in the Bible, was to raise up a nation of people who he would groom to accept his invitation and then would use to extend that invitation to all the other nations. This was the first mustard seed principle. God's way of winning the world back to himself and getting this world to come to his banquet table and to feast on him. And so Israel was chosen to be a nation of priests. Their main job was to receive the opulent blessing of God and then to embody God's character and will to attract the rest of the world to Yahweh. And you find this theme throughout the Old Testament. They're a nation of priests. They're a nation of servants. They're to model who God is to the other nations, to draw all nations unto God. The invitation has always been what we read earlier during our worship service, Isaiah 55. Whoever is thirsty, whoever is hungry, come to my table you don't need any money, no prerequisites, no preconditions. I just have a table here, and whoever wants it can come. That's always been God's invitation. You see, Israel had trouble getting that one. They continually wanted to do their own thing. They got involved in the nasty idol of religion and the idol of nationalism. They began to interpret their chosen status before God as a badge of righteousness, as sort of a holy club. We are the ones that God likes more than other people. Rather than seeing it as a vocational call to serve others, they began to define themselves as sort of the group of the righteous and began to judge the very people they were called to serve. Israel became a holy club that saw their special status before God as simply being about a bless me thing. We are the blessed people, not them. And they began to look down and disdain and judge the very people they were to be serving. Now, God is a patient God. He doesn't give up easily. And the whole Old Testament record is really centered on him trying to work with these people to get them to get it. And he makes concession after concession to help them get it. The Old Testament doesn't reveal much of God's ideal will. It's mainly about concessions he makes to these people. If you can't meet this bar, okay, I'll lower the bar. God's flexible like this. I'll meet you halfway. You can't do monogamy, okay, we'll go with polygamy for a while. Polygamy is not working either. Okay, we'll add on the concubine thing. I mean, he's a God who's flexible. Okay, I'm trying to make this work. He gives them the law as a concession. The law doesn't represent God's ideal will. God's ideal will was for them to directly relate to him, but they got freaked out at